Thank you. Jesse didn't mention that there was a lot of free food involved. So, like, I ate a lot of leftover pizza last night and a lot of leftover Indian the night before, and it was great.
He's easy to please.
Yeah. So, that is my name. My name is really Chris Clark, but nobody calls me that. And when Jesse and Elaine had us fill out the form when we were registering for this conference to tell us our theme songs, I was kind of thinking they'd be playing as we walked on stage. So I'm very pissed that we're not listening to Katy Perry right now, but I'm always pissed that we're not listening to Katy Perry right now. So this squiggle, you've probably seen something like this. I did this myself because I didn't want to steal anyone's cartoon. It looks janky. This is the design process, the mess of design. And it's kind of a joke for our coworkers because we're flighty and we're indecisive and we just run around changing our minds every single day for 3 months until we decide that this is what we're doing. As far as they're concerned, any one of the interstitial steps could have been built and shipped, but we were being fancy and trying to figure out what we want to ship. But this cartoon is also reassurance for us. It tells us as designers that this is normal, that it's okay to be this indecisive and this messy with our work. And that's kind of a big deal because otherwise we would be kind of paralyzed and feeling like failures all the friggin' time, because this is a big description of failure in motion until success. That's a problem is P and S is solution, and we just got to find the damn thing. And I know Meili talked about this a lot yesterday. So along the way, you get your mishaps and your dead ends, and we'd like to act like this is the real thing. We wish it was this, where you could just have a problem and then just take a single step and find a solution, and then be happy with it and know that it's the best, and not spend all your time investigating 12 other solutions that actually turned out to be not that good. But this is what we also present to the world, which is kind of wacky. We act as though this is how it really happened. And even when Johnny Ive is talking into the video and talking with his hands a lot, there is this thing where he's saying that there's a lot of attention to detail, there's a lot of craft, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. He does not say, we spent 4 years banging our heads against the wall and it fucking sucked. And then we found something that didn't suck. He's not being honest with us. We're not being honest with our customers, with our bosses, because this is what it is. This is our messy lives. Stuff happens during a project. Constraints change. Legal will come to you and say, we can't do this, or can you do this instead? Engineering will come to us and say, please, God, don't make us do that, or we don't have time for that on that schedule, so hell no. Or worst of all, we'd love to build that, but we have this legacy system that cannot be changed, and we also have upstream partners and their systems cannot be changed. We literally cannot build that, I'm sorry. And that's kind of, life. We design in the real world. We have real world constraints. Architects don't get to complain about the tensile strength of steel or how much load concrete can take. These are just constraints that we have to work with because we're professionals, is what I hear. So, what can we learn from this fact of life that we deal with that can benefit our users? Well, I'm going to go through a series of design thinkers, and they won't all call themselves design thinkers. But I want to tell you some about their work and how it applies to this. This is Don Norman. He is a partner at the Nielsen Norman Group. They're a design research facility, and he's written many great books, and they're all short reads, and they're all wonderful. The Design of Everyday Things, Emotional Design, et cetera, et cetera. And in 2003, he wrote this paper, Attractive Things Work Better, which is kind of a catchy title for what is effectively saying that it's not all function. Products obviously have to function, otherwise they're not products, they're expressions. They are art. If they've not been designed, if they don't fulfill a function that you're paying for, then they are decorative. But what he's saying is that form doesn't follow function blindly. You can make a very functional product that's fugly, so put in some effort to make it look nice, because it turns out that well-formed products appeal, and people are very forgiving of appealing products. People will take a product that has some rough edges, and if it looks nice, if it feels nice to use, when they hit one of those rough edges, they'll forgive it just a little bit. You get some leeway by having a nice looking product. But it's not just looking. He came up with 3 parts to his thesis, that there are 3 kinds of appeal that a product can have, and they're based on 3 different levels of cognitive processing. The first is visceral, which is a very animal thing. that when things look good, you like them. If it has a nice shape, it has a nice color, texture, smell, all these things. These kind of feed into your brain's ability to look at something and just sum it up very quickly. Is this safe for me? Am I going to be okay if I touch this? Should it be far away from me? Is this something that will contribute to my safety and comfort and health? And this is just, this is an animal instinct. Animals do this all the time. That's why it's like, okay, dogs do roll around in horse shit, but there are, things that all animals will avoid. There are things that all animals gravitate to, that it has to do with their own well-being. Beyond that, to take a step up the cognitive processing chain, some animals can do this, we can especially well, is behavioral appeal. Anytime that you gain an ability, if you have if you have a way to exercise that ability, if you have a tool, a guitar, a phone, what have you, that gives you an ability, that's like having a superpower. And that's something that really appeals to us as animals. We really like using tools. We're like one of the only animals that has tool use, and we're great at it, and we keep coming up with new tools, which is awesome, because we keep getting better and better superpowers. But more than that, we really like having control. Like, people hate having their choices taken away from them. They hate being out of control of situations. It's why we live in a democracy. It's like why we live in a capitalist society, because we like the idea of having choice more than anything. The idea that you don't have a choice or don't have some control over your destiny is really, really unsettling. But as well as this, it's also mastery. That like behavioral appeal is very much tied into the idea that you can get better at something, because getting better at stuff feels really good. That's why people learn to play guitar just for fun. It's why people drive cars just for fun. Like these tools have like functional uses. I mean, if you're a professional guitar player, that's a very functional use, but you'll probably still play it for leisure and for pleasure on the side. And cars are obviously a very functional thing, but people absolutely drive for fun. And then I forgot my third example. So mastery. And then there is reflective appeal. So this is the highest level of processing and it's fairly unique to humans a lot because we're very intelligent creatures, but also we're a highly sociable animal. Reflective appeal is things that sound good when you're bragging about them. This is actually called impression management. There's been a lot of research in this since the 50s and 60s about how people present themselves in the world and how that has other people interpret their appearance, behavior, this kind of thing. Because when you present yourself to the world, you want to look successful. Like, you don't post your really dull, boring Friday night sitting in front of the TV to Facebook. You only post your like exciting photos of vacation to Facebook. You only post the most interesting meals to Instagram. You only post your wittiest thoughts to Twitter. And these things all give the impression to other people, and these are other people that you depend on to survive because we're social creatures, that you have success, whether it's financial success or if it's political success. You're a popular person. Or if you have like a moral superiority. Like, this is why we buy products that come in 100% post-consumer recycled cardboard packaging. This is why we buy fair trade coffee beans. And this is why we gravitate towards products that like give money to charity. This is why many of us gave money to charity yesterday, because we're trying to look good in a social setting. So these three things, these three ways that a product can appeal to you, actually kind of come together in an interesting mix in any product. And you can't max out everything. You have to make trade-offs because that's what design is. So there's a kind of a fun game that I like to play, which is like dissect why a product is appealing. This is my favorite chair in the world. It's a steel-cased Think. I've sat on it for a couple of years, some years back when I had a different job. And it's very soft and it's very comfortable. And when I sit in it for 6 to 10 hours straight, I don't feel like I've been hit by a truck. So that's very important to me. That's a very visceral, appealing thing to me, that when I'm sitting in it, I don't feel like crap. But it looks crummy. It's like, it's a meteor-looking chair. There are plenty of great designer chairs in the world that look fantastic and they're pieces of art, but they suck to sit in. So they have to make that trade-off. I think when Herman Miller introduced the Aeron for the first time, all the test audiences that you have for chairs thought that it was ugly and it was awful. But they were so impressed by how comfortable it was, Herman Miller put it out in the market anyway and tried it, and it turns out that kind of revolutionized chair design. People were no longer just designing chairs for appearance, they started designing for comfort. And now we live with this. This is a normal looking chair to us now. Once upon a time, this was especially atrocious looking. But it's also a very expensive chair. This is an $800 chair. And so if you happen to own one, I do not because I don't have a home office anymore, and I certainly didn't spend $800 on a chair when I had a home office. That says a certain amount about you and your financial success. It has reflective appeal. This is a product that is, I'm sure some of you have heard of it. It's a meal replacement shake. Now, it's not like a protein shake or a diet shake. It's not like to an aim to help you improve your health or anything. It's intended to be a complete meal replacement shake that you could just eat it and nothing else, and you would have all your nutritional requirements met. But the packaging, you can see, and if I showed you a picture of the actual beige liquid that comes out of this, is not appealing. It doesn't taste appealing. It tastes like chalk. But so it's kind of like it's losing out on the visceral appeal there. But compared to a bowl of Cheerios, it's actually very good for you. And if you eat this for breakfast instead of Cheerios, you probably feel a lot better. So there is that visceral appeal that kind of combats the awkwardness of the product itself, that eating it makes you feel a little better. But if you look at the other kinds of appeal that it actually has a lot of behavioral appeal. It gives you control over your world, depending on how much food there is in your neighborhood or in your apartment, depending how much you even have a budget for food. This actually gives you a lot of control and choice in what you eat. And because you can whip it up instantly by mixing it with water, it gives you a lot of flexibility, which is very appealing in itself. But it's a socially awkward food, because food is an incredibly social experience. All human beings for all of history have needed to eat, and I dare say 99.99999 humans in all of human history have eaten socially. It's not something that you really do solitarily. And so opting in to ostracizing yourself from mealtimes with other human beings is kind of a dud move. I have Soylent in my home. I eat it for breakfast because that's 2 minutes before I leave the house and go to work. There's nobody else in the kitchen when I'm eating this. It's fine. And of course we have our iPhones. Shape and texture, all pretty sweet. Bright colors are very appealing, so it kind of nails the visceral appeal. But also it gives you superpowers. This is the best example we have today of a product that makes you superhuman just by using it. And that in itself has behavioral appeal, but also there's a lot of mastery involved. It's not just the apps that you go and get for it that you need to learn, but the system itself. If you remember the first time that you discovered or the first time you taught someone that tapping the status bar helps you scroll to the top of a page, that feels like you just learned something, and it's this big rush of holy shit, that was awesome. That just the more of those things you get, every time a new operating system comes out and there's a new nugget in there that you can learn, it makes you feel good. Learning feels great. It's also an expensive phone. When you pull it out in public, it says to the world, I'm someone who can afford an iPhone. And if you really want to dig into the whole reflective appeal thing, the social appeal of it, if you're a big Apple follower, you know that they invest a lot in factory conditions for workers, you know they invest a lot in the environment, you know they invest a lot in equality. And these are things that appeal to certain markets. They like the idea of a company that specifically invests in smaller packaging so that shipping is more effective. So all of us, when we're looking at products in the world, we weigh up these different concerns. And these are not always competing concerns, but there are obviously trade-offs to be made. And you could look at the iPhone from a completely different perspective than I do, for instance, and think, it doesn't give me full control. I'm not really in control of this. Apple has a walled garden. It's locked down. I'm not comfortable with that because they've taken away my agency. And you could think that this sucks from a behavioral perspective. You could look at the price of it and say that this is elitist, and I don't like that reflectively. And that's just the lesson that different people like different things. This is how we make our livings, because there is no one product for everyone. Otherwise, that we'd all just be wearing gray clothes and eating government cheese, and we'd be very happy. But it's fine. So the three appeals, they help you live with products, but they're also marketing, and they're also insurance. Because if you have invested yourself in a certain set of choices about a product you made, the switching costs go up. You can't just look at any other product and see that this product has different concerns, it has different reflective qualities, it has different visceral qualities, or different behavioral ones, and say, this is easy, I can make this trade. It's like, no, you get invested in these things. But fashion changes. Reflective qualities change over time. 50, 20 years ago, if you bought a gas-guzzling, like, muscle car, it had a very different, what is the word? A very different thing to say about you than buying an electric car does today. If you bought an electric car 20 years ago, you'd look like an idiot. If you buy a gas-guzzling muscle car today, you look like kind of a person who doesn't care about the environment so much. And then visceral appeal. Like, visceral appeal is pretty universal because it's hardwired. We don't really get a choice in what we find to be, you know, fun-looking or safe-looking or good-looking. But the world is full of things, pretty things, that are just stashed in drawers. Things that had no impact on a person's life. They bought it because it looked cool, and then they never used it, and it got thrown in a drawer. The world is full of books with great covers, with great blurbs. They sound great, and they look great. But they're boring to read, and they don't expand your horizons. So you don't even finish them, and you never recommend them to a friend. So this behavioral part, the part where using a product is fun and actually engages you long-term, is like the long-term ticket to success for a product. It's really where a lot of the optimization needs to go in. So something with high behavioral appeal feels good while you do it, which, since so much of our behavior is automatic, the idea that you could just do something and barely feel like you're doing it, but be satisfied with it, is very calming. And this is why, why people play guitars, why people play video games. But it also keeps you coming back. It's addictive, this feeling that you're getting better at something, that you're practicing something. Like, I don't play video games because I like pushing my screen like this over and over again for 30 minutes. Like, I play them because every time that I play the game, I try something a little different and I see if it works out better. Or I come up against a new challenge that I've never faced before in the video game, and I overcome it, and that makes me feel good. This is just like a weird thing about humans, that we like feeling good by overcoming challenges. So that mastery part of behavioral appeal, the part where there is a clear goal and you can work towards it and feel good along the way, is kind of the key to the whole thing. So Kathy Sierra here knows about mastery. She is an author of several programming books for novices and a great public speaker. And she says, well, her big thing is help your users be badasses. And she's just saying, let them be the superheroes, because that's what you're here for. You want to get people excited about their achievements. It's not how cool your app is, it's how cool the things your app does for them are. Because people don't care about your product, realistically. They care about themselves. We're all pretty selfish people. But if your product can help people do cool things, then they'll brag about the cool things that they did. And then their friends will say, how did you do that? And then they pimp your product, because word of mouth is amazing. But achievement is hard. If we're looking to try and build a product based around behavioral appeal that makes people excited about using it because they're engaged and they're learning, they're going to hit this. Because this isn't just design, this is your entire life. This is Michael Jordan being cut from varsity in high school and then going to the gym every day at 6 a.m. to practice until he got on the team. Michael Jordan was not put on the high school varsity basketball team. It's ludicrous to us now. But it's a failure. It was a little failure that he overcame. All skills are won through failure. You have to keep practicing, and that's why we have skills at all. So building a product upon achievement is kind of hard, because when people take a step and fail, and then take a step and fail, take a step and fail, that's kind of hard to get people to weather that storm. So Carol Dweck is a psychologist at Stanford University, and she has several books, I think, one of which is called Mindset, which is all about this challenge and failure, and it's about how people react to challenge, and especially how they react to challenge in the face of failure. And she gave kids, as part of her research for this book, a bunch of puzzles. And not these puzzles, like word puzzles, math puzzles, like stuff that uses your brain kind of crazily. And the kids are having fun, they're playing with the puzzles, and then she comes in and says, hey kids, here are some really hard puzzles. And the kids immediately break into two groups. One group is like, yeah, that's awesome, a challenge, this is exciting. And the other group is like, fuck this is too hard, I'm out. And that's everybody. We all do this. You have these two mindsets, and these are attitudes. Dweck calls them mindsets towards challenge and possible failure. She calls the first one a growth mindset, which is a person who sees challenge and sees the possibility of failure as an opportunity to get better at something. This is that everything is just practice. And then there's a fixed mindset that sees challenge and the opportunity to fail as a test, and that every failure is a judgment that they're useless and that they should not be doing this anymore. And the kids who give up the puzzles are the ones who see the potential to fail at the puzzle as a judgment that they should not be puzzle kids. They're not puzzle kids, but just stay away from puzzles. So we've all done this. What have you tried in your life and quit? Like, I'm not going to list all the things that I've quit, but I'm not a runner. Like, I tried running once and it hurt my legs, so I just never ran again. Like, I like walking places. Like, there are plenty of other things that hurt my legs, like snowboarding hurts my legs, but I don't do it every day. It's not like a health lifestyle thing. It's like a thing you do on vacation once or twice. But there are all these things in the world that are fun until they're a challenge, and at that point you say, this sucks. I'm not a blank. I'm not the kind of person who blank. If you think you're not good at something, so you're not going to do it anymore, it's kind of like weird because you could have just practiced. Like, I went to Dolores Park the other day, and there were a bunch of guys slacklining in the park. And then I was thinking about like people slacklining between skyscrapers and how ridiculous and dangerous that is, and how I would never do that, could never do that. But it's obvious that if I went to Dolores Park and like threw in with those hippies, that I could do that. Like, this is a thing that you can learn if you feel inclined. But it's perseverance. And everybody here is persevering with design. We're living through this mess every single day. And the thing about the world is not everyone is a designer. Lots of people tried this, looked at this, and walked away. Lots of people don't start with a problem and then take a step to a solution and think, this isn't the best solution. It doesn't fulfill any more than a couple of the requirements that I have for a solution. They just take a step towards a solution and be like, that's good enough. I mean, I'm just going to go with it because I don't want to think about this all day. I just want to do stuff. And those people didn't become designers because they're happy with their first try at a solution, even if it sucks, even if it doesn't fulfill all their dreams. We're just the lucky people who thought that this was fun for some reason. So when you're trying to make a more engaging product for people, and an engaging product demands that people invest time and get better at something, that road to mastery that is required to not only have people enjoy their time with your product, but also keep them around when competition arises, when you have a few nasty looking bugs, that you'll want to keep them around because they are engaged, because they're invested. People will struggle. Struggle is just part of the process. So when you're thinking about all right, how can I make my product that I'm working on, how can I make the relationships that I have with my clients better? It's also a matter of how do I make this feel more productive? What helped you? What helps you through this every single day? It's a few things. So priming is something that Dweck talks about in her book, where she could go to kids, and it's not that people are born into different mindsets. It's not that you're locked in them for life. It's just your attitude to a particular problem. So you can go to a kid and say, here's a hard puzzle. You're not going to get it at first, but we're going to get through it. We're going to try. And the kids will do okay with it. But if you go to a hard puzzle and say, if you go to the kid and say, this is a hard puzzle, nobody gets this, and they're just being like, why would I try? This is a waste of my time. So just the language that you use when you're introducing a challenge to a person makes a huge difference in their willingness to persevere through that challenge. Decomposition is how we manage our projects. Every project is a huge, scary project until you break it into different phases, break it into different milestones, break the idea of designing an entire operating system into, all right, what does it even need to do? What kind of rough features does it need? What are those features supposed to what are they supposed to fulfill in a person? When you break a big problem into 1,000 small problems, every one of those tiny problems is not so scary anymore. I do this with my to-do list, where I write something, I'm like, yeah, I have to do that. And then I look at it for a few weeks, I'm like, I don't have the 6 hours it's going to take to do that. I'm not checking that off my list today. And then it sits there and taunts me for weeks until I take some initiative and break it into like manageable chunks, and then you actually make progress. But inspiration is that carrot that you're dangling in front of people to say, I know that this sucks, and I know you're slogging through all this challenge and failure, and you're failing and failing, and you're getting better, but you're still failing. You're dangling that in front of people and saying, you can be here, you can progress and be better. It all just only takes effort. So when we're working on products that are trying to appeal to people, we got to remember there's Carol. She's here saying that failure is just a step, that effort is required, effort is mandatory, otherwise you're not going to get very far, and that people need encouragement and they need strategies with how to deal with failure, because failure sucks. But if you have a way to push through it, if you're assured that you can make progress, then you will. There's Kathy saying just people want to be empowered. People want to be badass. People want to show off their skills and their success. That's part of that reflective appeal, that showing off to other people how successful you are is just something that we like doing. So if you have a product that helps them do that, then you can kind of win on that. So make your customers a badass, and they'll sell your product to their friends. And then there's Don, who's saying, don't forget to make it look nice. There are plenty of other side angles that you can take. What reflective qualities can you have in your product that help people buy it? What reflective qualities are about your company or about your person that help people convince themselves that your product is a good choice when there are so many to choose from? Because there's this secret to happiness in the world, and it's the secret to happiness is do stuff that makes you happy. But there's a big caveat at the bottom that says, make sure that the stuff that you're doing that makes you happy also improves your health and your safety and your social status and your financial success. Because if you do stuff that makes you happy that burns all these to the ground, you're not going to be happy very long. Drinking and gambling kind of have problems. I mean, they make me happy, but so when you're chasing that secret to happiness, you know what makes you happy. You know how to get through the struggle of things that make you happy. Playing guitar is hard. I did it for years. I don't do it anymore because it stopped making me happy, but it's not a real problem. If you can design things that make other people happy and doing the design makes you happy, then everyone gets to be happy. So thank you.